At a prestigious Manhattan bank, a modestly dressed black man requests premium services but faces disdain and resistance from a condescending teller and her overconfident manager due to his unremarkable appearance. They attempt to dismiss him for merely inquiring about a wealth management account. Unbeknownst to them, this man is the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar partner corporation, and their bias is about to spark a corporate reckoning they'll never forget. Before we jump into this gripping tale, let us know where you're watching from in the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Marcus didn't glance back as the sleek glass doors of the bank slid shut, cutting off the bustling New York City afternoon. Inside, the atmosphere was pristine, a cool and polished space where faint jazz music floated, designed to calm an elite clientele far removed from the chaotic streets outside. He paused at the entrance, a tall figure in a simple charcoal jacket and scuffed loafers, his outfit tidy but understated, projecting a quiet professionalism that went unnoticed. He took a deep, measured breath, the kind a man takes before a high-stakes meeting, and approached the main teller counter. Behind the sleek, bulletproof glass, a young woman with neatly pinned auburn hair was engrossed in her tablet, her name tag reading Olivia. Marcus waited patiently, his eyes on her, anticipating basic courtesy. 1 second passed, then 2, then an uncomfortable stretch of time where his presence felt like a mere ripple in the air. The sharp clicks of her stylus were the only acknowledgement he received. Just then, a white man in a tailored navy suit entered, and Olivia's face instantly brightened. She greeted him with a warm smile, standing quickly to assist him with an eagerness that was both striking and revealing. Marcus felt a subtle clench in his jaw, but stayed perfectly composed. When Olivia's focus finally returned to her screen, he spoke, his voice steady and polite. "Excuse me, I'd like to discuss opening a wealth management account." Olivia's lips tightened, her silence icy. A moment later, her eyes flicked up, casting a dismissive, annoyed glance. "Do you have an appointment? We only handle account openings by scheduled appointment here," she said sharply, her tone final. Marcus's expression remained unchanged. He calmly explained that he wasn't seeking complex advice, just initiating an account with a certified check. With a frustrated huff, Olivia gestured vaguely toward a row of service counters across the lobby, offering no further guidance. He gave a polite nod and moved to the indicated station. When his turn arrived, he carefully placed his ID and check on the counter. Olivia approached, her gaze locking onto the ID with blatant skepticism. She picked it up gingerly, as if it were contaminated, examined it under the bright LED lights, then, in a swift, scornful motion, tossed it onto the polished granite floor with a sharp clatter. All eyes turned toward them. A heavy silence blanketed the bank's elegant interior, oppressive and tense. No one spoke. No one stepped in. The ID lay there, a discarded piece of plastic, devalued in the silent judgment of the room. A sharp, cold surge coursed through Marcus's chest, but he quelled it instantly, his face a mask of unshakable calm. Slowly, with a dignity that defied the raw humiliation of the moment, he bent down, his movements smooth and deliberate. He retrieved the card, his eyes rising to meet Olivia's in a quiet blend of defiance and intellect. Her face remained rigid, a portrait of arrogance without a trace of regret or shame. In that heavily charged stillness, Marcus knew he had entered a subtle battle, not just for his own rights, but against the unspoken biases festering within institutions meant to uphold fairness. As he stood, card in hand, he spoke. His voice was calm, but cut through the silence with surgical precision, each word delivered with quiet authority. "Remember what you did today," he began, his tone steady. "There will come a time when you'll face this moment again. And when you do," he paused, letting the weight of his words settle, "I assure you, I won't be the one feeling ashamed." Without another glance, He turned and walked toward the exit. Behind him, murmurs stirred, but they no longer mattered. As the glass doors parted and the vibrant, relentless Manhattan sunlight poured in, he knew he had endured a profound indignity. But he also knew, with a certainty as solid as the granite beneath his feet, that he would return, and next time, he would not be the one standing in silence. The sting of the bank lingered hours later as Marcus settled into the plush leather of his office chair. From his office on the 53rd floor of a midtown skyscraper, New York City sprawled below, a dazzling array of lights against the fading dusk. Yet he saw none of it. His focus was fixed on the sleek walnut desk and the single orderly file resting on it, embossed with the logo of Pinnacle Wealth Bank. This wasn't an insult to brush off. It was a flaw in the system, a breach of the principles he'd built his career on. A cold, resolute anger settled in his chest. Not explosive, but a deep, unyielding determination. He reached forward, his movements precise, and opened the file. There, in bold black ink on heavy paper, was the $2.3 billion contract his company had signed with Pinnacle Wealth Bank. His gaze rested on the signature line, Marcus T. Harper, Chief Executive Officer. He knew his worth, not as an abstract concept, but in the concrete reality of that document. He refused to let a few individuals' ignorance diminish it. Through the night, as the city slept, Marcus worked. He made no calls, sent no heated emails, consulted no attorneys. Instead, with the meticulous focus of a strategist, he compiled his evidence. The signed contract, his company's full financial portfolio, and a direct letter of confirmation from Pinnacle Wealth's board. Each page was a testament to undeniable truth. This was not a plea for apologies, but preparation for a reckoning. As dawn's first light crept across the skyline, he stood, dossier complete. He walked to his closet and chose a tailored navy suit, a crisp white shirt, and polished brogues. This wasn't attire for a meeting, it was armor. As he knotted his tie, his reflection in the glass revealed a man whose quiet dignity from the day before had transformed into unassailable authority. He was returning to the bank, not as a dismissed client, but as a partner they couldn't afford to lose. The glass doors of Pinnacle Wealth Bank slid open with a soft hum. Marcus didn't hesitate. He strode inside, his brogues clicking with steady authority on the polished floor. A few startled glances came from patrons and staff who had ignored him the previous day. He disregarded them, his path unwavering, heading straight to the reception desk where Sophia sat, her demeanor one of practiced indifference. She looked up, a spark of irritation in her eyes. But before she could speak, Marcus cut in. His voice was calm yet resonant, commanding the lobby's attention. "I need to see the branch manager, Mr. James Carter, immediately." Sophia faltered, caught off guard by his firm tone. "I'm sorry, sir, but Mr. Carter is unavailable." "I'm certain he'll make time for me," Marcus replied smoothly, placing a heavy business card on the desk with the finality of a sealed verdict. Reluctantly, Sophia glanced at the card. Her expression shifted from annoyance to shock, then to raw panic as she read, Marcus T. Harper, Chief Executive Officer, Harper Global Solutions. Without meeting his eyes, she grabbed the card and hurried toward the manager's office, her composure unraveling. Moments later, the door swung open and James Carter emerged, his face a mix of confusion and alarm. "Mr. Harper," he stammered, eyes wide as they fixed on the impeccably dressed man. "I had no idea." "I'm sure we should discuss this privately," Marcus said, his tone crisp and authoritative, leaving no room for debate. Defeated, Carter led him into his office, the door closing with a soft click that echoed like a judge's gavel. Marcus approached the polished desk and set down his stack of documents, contracts, confirmations, credentials, with a sound heavy with consequence. Carter leafed through them, his face paling with each page as he realized not only the identity of the man humiliated, but the critical multi-billion-dollar role he played in the bank's future. "Mr. Harper, I'm at a loss for words," he whispered, his voice shaking as he sank into his chair. Marcus held his gaze, his expression unreadable. "I'm not here for apologies, Mr. Carter. I'm here to ensure you understand this. Yesterday, your bank treated a key partner with contempt. That is unacceptable, and there will be consequences unless you acknowledge the severity of this error." Carter stared at his desk, broken. In that tense silence, Marcus knew his words had struck with force. As he stood to leave, he paused at the door, turning back with unwavering clarity. "I leave today not as a humiliated client, but as a partner, giving your institution one final chance to correct this. I trust you'll act wisely." The door closed softly behind him, leaving Carter to face the wreckage of his authority. As Marcus left the bank, the gleaming lobby fading behind him, he felt no triumph. The fear in Carter's eyes was a symptom, not a solution, a fleeting panic that would vanish once the immediate threat passed. A quiet disappointment burned in his chest. A perfunctory apology, which he knew was coming, would be insufficient, a mere bandage on a deep wound. He realized with stark clarity that this wasn't the fault of a few individuals, but a quietly accepted culture within the institution. To address the root, he needed to confront the top, someone who grasped the contract's value and the fallout of a damaged partnership. One name came to mind. Settling into the leather of his waiting sedan, he acted without hesitation, his moves calculated. "Lila," he said when his assistant answered, his voice calm and firm. "Secure an urgent meeting with Ms. Elizabeth Monroe, Regional President of Pinnacle Wealth Bank. Emphasize that it's critical and tied to the bank's $2.3 billion project." A brief pause followed, filled with rapid typing. Less than 30 minutes later, as his car glided through Manhattan traffic, his phone pinged. The meeting was set for that afternoon. The swift response confirmed the gears of power were now turning in his favor. As the sedan approached the bank's towering headquarters, Marcus gazed at the skyline. He wasn't just fighting for his dignity anymore. He was demanding accountability at the highest level, ready to challenge the system that had deemed him unworthy. Elizabeth Monroe's office sat on the top floor of the bank's headquarters, a sleek expanse of glass and modern art with a commanding view of Manhattan. She greeted Marcus with a professional but cautious tone, a woman used to assessing risks before speaking. Without pleasantries, Marcus opened his briefcase, pulled out the dossier, and placed it firmly on the expansive conference table. "Ms. Monroe," he said evenly, "I suggest you review this contract again. It involves my company, your bank's strategic partner, on the $2.3 billion project." Monroe raised an eyebrow, her expression shifting from neutral to intrigued as she opened the file. She scanned the pages with practiced speed until she reached the signature line. Her hand paused, trembling slightly. Below her own signature, as the bank's representative, was Marcus T. Harper, Chief Executive Officer. For a breathless moment, the room was silent. Monroe looked up, her face pale, as the catastrophic weight of her staff's actions sank in. "Mr. Harper," she whispered, her voice unsteady. I had no idea." Marcus met her gaze, unflinching. "The issue isn't just ignorance, Ms. Monroe. It's the culture in your bank that silently tolerates bias and discrimination. Pinnacle Wealth treated me as if I didn't belong, despite my signature on a deal worth billions to you." Monroe sank back in her chair, her eyes scanning the contract, as if searching for an escape she knew didn't exist. She understood the stakes, not just the financial loss, but the indelible damage to her bank's reputation. The moment Marcus left, a wave of tension swept through Pinnacle Wealth Bank. Within an hour, senior leadership launched a relentless internal investigation. Every record, camera feed, and email was examined. The involved staff were called in immediately. Olivia, the once confident teller, sat before a panel of executives, her arrogance gone, stammering through weak excuses until the footage played, showing her tossing Marcus's ID to the floor. Her pretense crumbled into shame. James Carter, the branch manager, sat rigid, hands clenched until his knuckles whitened, as evidence of his inaction was exposed. Sophia quietly resigned within 2 days, unable to face the fallout. That evening, Elizabeth Monroe called an urgent all-staff meeting. Standing before a hushed room, her voice was firm and grave. "We have made a grave error," she said, her gaze sweeping the room. "These actions were unacceptable. From now on, I expect each of you to reflect. Have you ever shown similar biases? If so, change now, before it's too late." As the meeting ended, employees left with heavy thoughts, aware the ground had shifted beneath them. The bank had faced a painful but necessary reckoning, ensuring such a mistake would not repeat. The changes at Pinnacle Wealth didn't just disrupt its ranks, they transformed the lives of those at the heart of the incident. As the glass doors closed behind them, Olivia and James Carter faced the consequences of their long, unchecked behaviors. Olivia, once poised with cold confidence at the teller counter, now wandered Manhattan streets in a daze, her self-assurance shattered. After her termination, unemployment forced her to confront her actions' impact. One morning, driven by guilt, she volunteered at the Fair Finance Alliance, a nonprofit aiding minority communities with equitable banking access. Initially an act of atonement, her work with those who'd faced her kind of contempt opened her eyes to the pain her indifference caused. One afternoon, sitting with an elderly African-American woman hesitant to enter a bank, fearing rejection, Olivia's eyes welled up. In the woman's fear, she saw the true weight of her past actions. For James Carter, the former branch manager, the reckoning was more calculated. Stripped of his title and reassigned to a small compliance role, he initially felt only the loss of status. But in those quiet moments, he realized losing respect hurt more. He joined the bank's outreach program for minority-owned startups. For the first time, he confronted the barriers he'd once ignored, advising young entrepreneurs of color on systemic challenges. One evening, counseling a driven young black man denied funding, he recalled Marcus's strength and pain, finally grasping the insult his silence had enabled. In his small office, Carter vowed to dedicate his career to uplifting those he'd once overlooked. For both, it was a path not just to redemption, but to a deeper purpose, forged from the ruins of their former selves. While those who wronged Marcus began their journeys of atonement, he moved into a new chapter, defined not by the scandal, but by a greater mission. In the days following the incident, his office received countless calls from media outlets eager for a sensational story. Marcus declined every interview. He knew reliving his pain wouldn't dismantle systemic biases, only action could. Instead, he launched Rise Upward, a leadership and financial literacy program for young entrepreneurs of color in New York City. Beyond teaching skills, it aimed to build the resilience needed to break through invisible barriers. Marcus led each session, sharing his experiences of being dismissed and doubted, not as a victim, but as a mentor showing these challenges were universal, and response was key. Word spread fast. Within weeks, young people from across the city filled his classes, their eyes burning with renewed determination. One evening, a young man lingered after a session. "Mr. Harper," he said, his voice steady despite his emotion. "Today, I walked into a bank feeling worthy. Not because I expected approval, but because I finally knew my value. Your program changed my life." Marcus felt a lump in his throat. He realized his work wasn't just about knowledge. It was about instilling the belief that everyone deserved opportunity. One morning, in his program's modest office, an envelope arrived bearing Pinnacle Wealth's logo. It was an invitation to speak as the keynote at the city's annual business summit. At the bottom was Elizabeth Monroe's signature. Marcus stared, not with resentment, but with irony. The bank that had wronged him now sought his voice. After a moment, he accepted, seeing it as a chance to amplify his message. At the summit, the Grand Hyatt's ballroom buzzed with executives and entrepreneurs. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over their polished suits, creating an air of prestige. Marcus spotted Elizabeth Monroe in the front row, her eyes respectful. Beside her sat James Carter and Olivia, their faces a mix of anticipation and quiet remorse. As his name was announced, the room burst into applause. Marcus took the stage, calm and assured. His gaze briefly met those who had wronged him, but it held no blame. He wasn't there to dwell on the past, but to shape a better future. Adjusting the microphone, he let silence settle before speaking, his voice clear and powerful. Today, I won't talk about myself or the past. Instead, I ask us to consider a question with the power to change how we treat each other. The room leaned in, expectant. He smiled softly, then asked, each word deliberate. How would our world change if we trusted each other's worth from the moment we meet? A profound hush fell, the question striking deep. James Carter sat still, hands clasped, haunted by the cost of his past doubts. In the back, Olivia wiped a tear, realizing trust could have saved her job and dignity. Others in the audience reflected on their own judgments. Marcus stood silently, letting the question resonate. After a minute, one person clapped, and applause erupted, filling the room with support. As he stepped down, Elizabeth Monroe approached, her eyes sincere. "Thank you, Marcus," she said. "Your words taught me more than business." Marcus nodded, his gaze kind but firm. "We can all change, Elizabeth. The question is whether we're brave enough to start by trusting each other's worth." He walked away, feeling at peace. He hadn't just healed his wounds, he'd sparked healing in others. His story was no longer his alone. It was a catalyst for change. In that, he found his greatest victory. Join us to share impactful stories by hitting like and subscribe. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell for daily doses of inspiration and empathy.